Okay, so thanks everyone for joining today's session. Today is the third day of the whole training, and today we are going to describe about web services because this is one of the main thing which we are going to use in the integration. We are going to I'm going to describe the REST versus SOAP. Then we will look at today how to use the REST adapter. The first integration we will start developing today. Call external API in OIC, how to call external API in OIC, expose the SOAP API, and how to use SOAP API in OIC. Okay, so in the last session, we have seen how to create a OIC instance, how to create users in IDCS, what are the application roles, and I have also walked you through about navigations, the different navigations of OIC, like the integration navigations. We have covered various basic building blocks like integrations, connections, lookups, agents, and we have seen the monitoring dashboard, and we have seen other setting stuff too, which will help you to do the settings related to the integration. Guys, if you have any question, anyone from the previous two sessions, you can ask now, or you can ask at the end of the session also. No question, then I will move forward. Okay. So basically, the web services is one of the communication mechanism with the third party application, using which you can communicate with the application. Okay. So let's suppose you need to communicate with any one of the application in the world, whether it's an Oracle application, non-Oracle application, your homegrown application, whatever applications you have, you may have a different data sources using which you can take data into your integration and can send this data to the target application. So till the time any application have the communication mechanism, at least one of the mechanisms, then you will not be able to integrate that application. So that communication mechanism might be your database with that application, using which you can connect to that application and take the data. It can be a file system. The source or target system can keep the data on their file system from where you can pick up the data. It can be a mail wherein they will say, I will send an email, from where you can read the emails and then send the data wherever you want. It can be another mechanism, which is one of the popular mechanisms, and the recommended approach is called web services, or sometimes they are called APIs. So whenever you start the integration, you need to understand what web service is, what the APIs are. It is because whatever adapter you are using, the abstract way to communicate with the application is APIs only. As of now, each and every application, specifically the SaaS application, provides their REST APIs so that you can communicate with those applications if you want to integrate with them, or you want to upload the data, you want to post the data. Similarly, if you want to integrate those applications, you can leverage those APIs and then communicate with that application. If even APIs are not available of that application, that doesn't mean you cannot communicate with that application. You can also communicate via the FTP mechanism or the database directly. But APIs are the recommended approach. What APIs are and where to write APIs? APIs are nothing. It is just a communication mechanism, and it is language independent. You can create APIs or the web services is in any one of the technologies like Java, .NET, PHP, or any other thing like or you can create APIs in the middleware platform. And once APIs are created, developed, or exposed, any system can call your APIs to communicate with your system. So web service is the way to communicate between applications without knowing each other technologies. So if you want to integrate one of the application, and if they have the APIs, then you don't know which technology they are using to build that application. If you want to communicate, you can simply use their APIs and then push the data, pull the data, update the data, and then fetch the data. Web service is a standardized medium to propagate communication between client and server on the World Wide Web. All the APIs which you created that can be used via the internet or the intranet. So these are the web mechanisms to communicate with those applications. A web service is a software module that is designed to perform a certain set of tasks. Task means it can be to create a user or the employee or any other resource which you want to and it can be like to fetch the data from the application. It can be to update the data. It can be to query the data. It can be used to search the data. So there are a lot of tasks which you can perform via the APIs depending on the behavior of the API you are using. And now you may have heard there are two types of APIs or the web services. Sometimes you have heard you need to use SOAP. Sometimes you need to use REST APIs. What SOAP and what REST is? SOAP stands for Simple Access Object Protocol. This is the definition. This is the full form of the SOAP, which is Simple Access Object Protocol. It is nothing. It is just a protocol which was designed before the REST. So REST came later. SOAP was the earlier approach to communicate with the application. The main idea behind designing SOAP was to ensure that programs built on different platform and programming language could exchange data in an easy manner. As I mentioned that, so without knowing the technology of the other application, you can use the API. So the main intent of the SOAP was to create a way so that you can communicate with the application without knowing the technology of the other side's application. The SOAP, basically, we consider this is a heavyweight APIs because it is the way we communicate with the SOAP is the XML only. And if you say the XML payload, it's a very heavyweight. It's a tightly coupled in the sense that there's a fixed structure of the XML which you need to follow always. There's another way to communicate with the other application in terms of the API, which is called REST. REST is not a protocol. It's a representational state transfer. It is a set of rules that developers follow when they create their API. So there are different set of rules which you need to follow in order to develop the REST APIs. And these SOAP or the REST can be developed in any one of the technology. One of these rules states you should be able to get a piece of data called a resource. So whenever you communicate with the REST APIs, you can refer a resource. A resource can be considered as a table of the database, just like the employee. Employee you can consider a resource and on that resource you can do different operations like create, update, delete, put, and then post. When you link to a specific URL, when you create a REST API, it provides a unique URL of a particular resource. However, when you design the SOAP, it provides the WSDL URL. WSDL means WSDL. Maybe you have heard that. WSDL stands for Web Service Description Language. It is nothing. It is the definition of your SOAP API, which tells you which operations are there, what is the request and then response you need to define in your SOAP. It will define where your SOAP is located. So WSDL is just a XML file. Now, when to use REST, when to use SOAP, and what is the difference between them? SOAP, as I mentioned, it's a protocol. However, the REST is the architectural style. Protocol, you see, we have a set of rules which we always need to follow in the SOAP APIs. So if we divert with those rules, then you will not be able to use the SOAP APIs. But this is not the case in the REST. SOAP mainly works with the XML. So if you want to develop the SOAP APIs, the request and then response will always be in the XML. However, in the REST, you can create the REST APIs which can have the data in the JSON, XML, plain text, or the HTML too. SOAP, it don't use the any verb, it works on the HTTP and then HTTPS protocol. However, the REST works on the verb. So when you create the REST, you need to define the verb like the get, put, post, delete, and then patch. Maybe you have heard in the past too, like the get, it's a get API. Get, as the name suggests, get. It is to get the resource, like to fetch the employee's data. Put and patch are basically used to update a resource, like you want to update a employee details. Post is used when you want to create a resource like the employee. Delete is basically used when you want to delete a particular resource. SOAP is a heavyweight because it is defined by the XML, and REST is lightweight. And so REST is basically used when you want to define the mobile applications. For example, you are creating a SaaS application and you also want to develop the mobile application of that. So better you first create the REST APIs and then use those REST API in the mobile application to communicate with those applications. So that is about the web services, REST, and then SOAP, REST versus SOAP. And most of the organizations are using the REST these days, and it is also the recommended approach. Any question, anyone? I hope it is clear, the web services, REST and SOAP. If you have any question.
Hi, Ankur, Tejeshwar here. Yeah, from technical perspective, you explained SOAP and REST. Business scenario, can you give an example when one will go for SOAP and one will go for REST? I mean, pros and cons both are there, as you have explained as well in the previous slide. When like heavyweight and lightweight.
Yes.
And similarly, it's only XML and this supports the various formats. But from business perspective, when one will go for SOAP or one will go for REST?
So REST,
though any application will provide both SOAP and REST.
Yes. So if you see your Fusion application, right, earlier, or the EBS application, right? So not EBS, the Fusion application. The Fusion application provides both REST versus SOAP. Why? Sometimes what happens, the application is the old design architecture and don't have a capability to consume the REST. So the SaaS application has to provide SOAP as well as the REST. Sometimes the application is not enough capable to consume the SOAP. So SaaS application will provide the REST too, so that it can be communicated with any one of the application. But slowly organizations are moving towards the REST, and then SOAP is about to deprecate. REST is basically used when you want to have a mobile interfaces, and in whatever applications you are creating or the product you are creating, most of the application have their mobile interfaces too. It is because the REST is heavyweight. Make sense?
Delete. Okay.
So now let's proceed further. I hope you can see the white.
Got it. My voice is okay.
Yeah, Nevix.
Yeah. See, what about the HTTP request? Okay. Get clear, post clear, delete clear. What is patch?
Okay. So let's suppose the patch is nothing. It is just like to apply a patch. So what happens? Let's suppose you have one employee record, okay, wherein you have a lot of data like the first name, last name, the email address, phone number, age. You only want to update a certain set of fields. then you will use the patch. Put is also for the update. Put is basically used when you want to update the whole row of a particular employee. But yes,
Okay.
both you can use patch or put, but it says if you are doing the set of fields, then do the patch, otherwise you can do the put.
Okay. You're saying specific column means we will go with the patch.
Huh?
Specific column update means okay, we will go to patch.
Yes, correct. Okay, now let's proceed further and let's explore the REST adapter. What REST adapter is, and I have explained what adapters, what is adapter in my last class. Now here we are going to use the REST adapter and what are the capabilities of the REST adapter. So REST adapter is basically used to expose or the create REST APIs in the integration, as well as they can be used to consume any one of the REST APIs. The REST API which you want to consume, can be it can be on the it can be on the public or it can be on the private. Okay. When you expose the REST API, you can have the JSON payload, you can have the XML payload, you can have the octet as well. Like you can create a REST API which can accept the attachments too. Similar ways, when you want to consume the REST APIs, you can consume the JSON response, you can consume the XML response, or you can consume the REST API which sends the attachment as a response too. The REST adapter can be used to develop the REST API as well as to create the REST APIs. Now, if you want to create your REST APIs, you have to use the REST adapter. Similarly, if you want to consume the REST APIs, you have to use the REST adapter. And REST adapter falls under the category of which adapter, what kind of REST adapter is, guys? I explained in the last class.
Technical.
Huh?
Technical.
Absolutely, yes. So in order to create connection of any one of the application, you have to go to the connections and you have to come on the REST. And REST is the adapter. Just search the adapter name and then select. When you create any one of the connection, you will see this dialog box wherein you need to put the name, you need to put the identifier, any keyword to identify the connection, and then role. The name can be anything. Let's say create REST API. The name can be anything. The identifier will be picked up automatically based on the name which you provide here. But all it will be in the caps. If you want to update the identifier, you can update too. The keyword can be anything. This is one of the important thing you need to understand. Trigger, invoke, trigger, and invoke. So this is the role we can say. Anyone, any idea about that role?
Ankur, I think trigger and invoke works as if this adapter is used at the source end or at the
Correct.
destination end.
Correct. Yes, correct. So basically, maybe you have heard inbound and outbound. Inbound to source application or outbound to the source application or the target application. So inbound means you are calling or something is going to the application, that is called inbound interface, right? And what outbound is means you are sending the data from the application, that is called outbound interface. So you can say trigger is an inbound to OIC, invoke is outbound to OIC. Trigger and invoke means inbound to OIC as well as outbound to OIC. So let me just open Paint online. Okay, fine. So let's say you have the layer must contain an image. Okay, fine. So let's say you have the OIC here. Okay, you can say this is your OIC, right? Sometimes you need to send the data to the OIC, and sometimes you need to send the data from OIC to any other application. Make sense? You can say target application. So that is called your inbound, or it is your trigger. Or it is called outbound, or it is called invoke. Means, let's suppose you want to send the data to the OIC from any application, then you need to create a connection on the trigger role. But if OIC want to call any application, then you have to create that connection with the invoke role. The target application can send data to the OIC also. So let's suppose you want to call your Fusion application from the OIC. Then you will create the connection with the ERP adapter with invoke role, and might be ERP can send the response to the OIC. But that doesn't mean that it is inbound to OIC. No, you have to create a connection with the invoke role only. Similarly, let's suppose you are creating a REST API. If you are creating a REST API in a OIC, then someone will call the OIC and will send the data. Or this REST API can send the response back to the caller as well. But doesn't mean that it is the outbound to OIC. That is a synchronous, you can say. But the connection will be built on the trigger role. Sometimes in the Fusion, let's suppose the Fusion, you want to subscribe the event from the OIC application, and then also additionally you want to call the Fusion application. Then in that case, you can create the ERP connection with both the roles, trigger and invoke. So that is the concept of the role, trigger and then invoke. You need to understand this concept, guys. Any question?
Can you give an example of trigger and role together?
I have given. So let's suppose you want to expose a REST API. Now tell me, if any SaaS application provides the REST API, as a consumer, you will send the data to that application, right? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Then it will be inbound for that application. So similarly, let's suppose you are creating the REST API in the OIC. And then in order to create the REST API, you have to use the REST adapter. And while you create the REST adapter, you have to choose the role trigger. It is because you want to,
Read the data.
because someone will trigger the OIC and will send the data. But if you want to consume the API, of any application, then it will be invoke. Make sense?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
I hope it is clear to everyone. Okay, fine. Now you tell me, I want to create the REST API. So I should select trigger, invoke, and trigger and invoke. I want to create a REST API. What type of role I should select here?
Trigger.
Are you agree, guys? Do you agree? Trigger, correct. Click on a create button. So when you create any connection, you will be landed onto the connection page. Here, when you create the REST adapter with role trigger, you will see only the option called security policy. And here you will see two security policy like the basic authentication, OAuth, and OAuth 2.0 or basic authentication, which means when this feature security policy in the REST adapter is introduced recently, means in the trigger. Earlier in the REST adapter, you own your REST API which you expose in the OIC was using the basic authentication only, but this time you can trigger, you can secure your REST APIs via the OAuth 2.0. If you want your APIs to be based on the basic authentication, you can select the basic authentication. If you want your REST APIs to be OAuth, you can select OAuth. If you want both, you can select both. So let me just select both. And here you see the 100%, which means everything is okay. Used by in how many integrations you have used this connection? No. Last save, and here click on a save.
Ankur, can you please repeat security again? Once again, sorry.
The security is like when you create the REST API, you need to pass some credentials to call that API. This is not the open API, right? So there are two things here. Like you can secure this REST API via the basic authentication. Basic authentication is nothing. It is wherein you need to pass the username and then password to call that API. However, in the OAuth 2.0, it's more secured APIs, more secured mechanism wherein first you need to generate the dynamic access token, and using that access token, you can call that REST API. And if you want to apply both the mechanism, you can have that too.
Okay, thanks, Ankur.
Hey, Ankur. So
Yeah.
this OAuth is something like the keys that we generate in the SFTP. Is that what we can?
No. OAuth is the authentication policy. It's the open OAuth. Maybe you can view that it is one of the security which you can apply on any one of the REST API. Also, the OAuth you can apply on the SOAP APIs too. So it is not, it is totally independent from the FTP actually.
No, that's not what I was saying. What I was saying is, see, in the SFTP connections, like we can create the connectivity using the user credentials, like the user ID and password, or with the keys. So the very first authentication that you said, basic authentication, is that we have to pass the user credentials.
You can consider the same as well here. So when you create a FTP wherein you can provide different kind of security. One is like username and then password. You can consider this is a plain security, username and then password. But in FTP, you can secure your FTPs via the private keys, but it is not OAuth. OAuth is totally different.
Okay.
In OAuth, you don't require any keys, but here you need the client ID, client secret. Sometimes you need the username, password to secure your APIs.
Thank you.
Someone is sketching something on the screen. Fine. Now here use the 100%, which means your
Ankur, 1 minute. Yeah. See that what we are saying, the two is clear. See, one is the security, okay, username, password. The second one, okay, what about the authentication key? You told the third one. What is the third one?
OAuth or basic authentication. If you select this, which means the consumer can use the REST basic as well as the OAuth. But if you use OAuth, then consumer will not be able to call this API via the basic authentication. They have to use the OAuth only to consume this API.
Okay. But normally the only the two method, right? The username, password, or otherwise the key only.
Yes. Earlier in the 20th version of the OIC, this feature was not there. Only the basic authentication was not there by default. Fine. Now here you see our connection is created. It depends. It is on the REST adapter. As of now, we have not used this adapter in any one of the connection, hence it is 0. You can view the connection in the view mode. You can update it. You can view the details of the connection. You can clone the connection. You can refresh. You can delete it. Now go to the integration. Now what my use case is, I want to create a greeting REST APIs wherein I will pass the name, and in that API the response will be like hi name or hello name, whatever. So it's a plain REST API which I'm going to create. In order to create any integration, you have to first create the connection. At least one connection must exist in order to create any one of the integrations. Now, in order to create an integration, you have to come on the integration screen and click on the create button. When you click on the create button, you will see this pop up wherein you will have a different styles: app driven, scheduled, file transfer, basic routing, publish to OIC, and then subscribe to OIC. So these are the patterns on which you have to create the integration. What app driven is, what is scheduled, what is file transfer. So what app driven orchestration means is, so it is a multi-step integration flow invoking applications, integrations, and processes triggered by an application or API, which means using this pattern, you can create an orchestration process that will be triggered by someone, or you can subscribe the events from the application wherein you can do lot of messaging. You can call n number of application. You can call Fusion application. You can call BI application in the same integration. You can do if, you can do switch, you can do for loop, you can do the exception handling, which is multi-step. But this app driven, when you use this app driven, there will be a trigger point. On the trigger point, you have to drop the adapter, the connection which you create, which will be based on the rolled trigger. If you want to create the REST API or the SOAP APIs, you have to choose the app driven only. If you want to what we say, if you want to capture the events from the Salesforce or the HCM cloud or the Oracle Sales Cloud or the Oracle ERP, then also you have to choose the app driven. Schedule orchestration, maybe you have heard the batch jobs. If you want to create the batch jobs in the integration, then you have to choose the scheduled orchestration. Again, it is a multi-step integration flow wherein you can call multiple integrations, multiple APIs, multiple applications. You can do the messaging. It is basically used when you want to batch or bulk processing of your data, and the trigger point of this integration will be scheduled. So when you create the schedule integration, you have to schedule it. It can run on a 1 hour basis, 1 hourly basis. It can run in every 10 minutes. It can run weekly. It can run twice in a day. It can run yearly, depending on the requirement. File transfer, it is like a scheduled only. In this file transfer also, you can do the multi-step integration flow, and it is also schedule integration. Whatever you can do in the schedule, you can do in the file transfer too. Both are very same. Basic routing pattern, it is one of the simplest pattern, and it is the deprecated pattern. Oracle will remove this basic routing pattern soon. You don't need to use it, but it is used when you have only two applications talking to each other, and you cannot massage any data here. You cannot do the for looping. You cannot do the branching here. You cannot handle the exception in the basic routing. It is just like connecting one application and sending it to the target application. You see, only two. Publish to OIC, subscribe to OIC are very, very important pattern. Maybe you have heard the McKinnon's queuing mechanism. Okay, where you have one queue, you send the data into the queue, and this queue can be connected with multiple subscribers who is interested in the data, and it is subscribed to OIC. Publish to OIC means sending the data into the queue. Subscriber means how many applications want to subscribe the data from the queue. So I will give you an example here. Let's suppose you have mobile wherein you have installed one news mobile application. Okay, and also you have subscribed few channels, few newsletters, or few specific news. You also having the same news application. I am also having the same news application, and I am also interested in the same news, and you have also interested in the same news. So the news organize the let's suppose I have the Times of India, okay, and I have interested in one of the news regularly. So what I will do, I will subscribe that. You will also subscribe that. As soon as the Times of India will publish one news, I will get the notification. You will also get the notification because I have subscribed that channel. Like I have my YouTube channel, okay, and I am the publisher for that YouTube. I can publish the YouTube videos time to time, and you are one of the subscriber of my YouTube channel. The another guy is also the subscriber of my YouTube channel. As soon as I will publish one news, you will be notified because you have subscribed to. So I am the publish to OIC pattern, and you are the subscribe to OIC pattern. Now let me just take an example of the HRMS application. You may have the HRMS application in your organization as a source of truth of the employees' data. And in your organization, you may have a different other applications like the application 1, application 2, application 3. And in order to work those applications functionally, the employees' data should be there so that employees can log in into the application and then work as per their role, as per their designation, as per their band. So those applications should have that data. So you can create one integration based on the publish to OIC, which will take the data from the HRMS application and will send that data to the OIC queue using this pattern. So the data will be published into the OIC queue automatically. So you will only have the trigger point where you have to connect to your source application. And now let's suppose you have app 1, app 2, app 3. So you have to create 3 integrations separately based on the subscribe to OIC pattern, and then connect to the same queue. And then connect this subscribe to application to your app 1, app 2, app 3. As soon as a new employee will come in, this integration will be fired. This integration will send the data to your queue. And once the data will come, all 3 subscriber or 2 subscriber will be fired. And the benefit of this approach is later you have another application onboarded. So you can create another integration, subscribe to OIC, connect to the same queue and get the data. Make sense? I hope the patterns are clear to everyone.
Ankur, the key difference between app-driven and schedule is only that scheduling party, or apart from that, any other difference?
Yes, correct.
So, Ankur, once that is, I selected the app driven and developed OIC integration. After that, can I change that to scheduled orchestration?
So basically, in the recent release of the OIC, let's suppose you have the schedule orchestration, okay? Then you can convert this schedule in the REST based only as of now. But let's suppose you have the app driven wherein you have created the REST API, then you cannot change it. But in the schedule integration, you can convert into the REST based API only.
Ankur, between app driven and schedule orchestration, there is only difference between this app driven and schedule. It's and all the underlying objects, like all the components and the functionality is same.
Absolutely.
We can achieve the same functionality from both. The orchestration is just the trigger functionality, we can say, or this
yes, correct.
The invoking functionality.
Correct. That will be called by someone, but it will be called automatically based on the frequency you define.
But we can achieve our integration or the functionality from both the
we can call a
components.
number of applications from the schedule and orchestration too. You can do massaging too. Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ankur, Tejeshwari, actually, I mean, when we go with the integration style, as you were discussing, most of the times we will have a real time or a schedule. So scheduled orchestration is clear. So if it is going to be app driven, is it something like a business event trigger like in the
yes,
EVs?
Correct. So business event plus as well as when you want to create REST API or the SOAP APIs as well.
Okay. So when you mentioned that multiple applications, say for example, invoice processing, I have two different third-party systems. So in scheduled as well as app driven, I can have access from both the two different sources, and which will get imported into the SaaS application.
Correct. But you have to create the connection first from those applications.
So one connection will go and suffice for both, or there has to be two different
so connection is separate for one application. One connection is only for one application. But once a connection is created with ERP, you can use the same connection in n number of the integrations.
Yeah, that you explained last time. Like one connection can be across 7 resources or 10 resources in a project. They can use the same connection.
But the one connection, let's suppose ERP cannot be used for the sales one.
Yeah, I mean module specific, it will be again like CRM or sales or creation of orders or customers. It will be one connection. So now at the last you were explaining about like basic routing, soon Oracle is going to remove and publish to OIC and subscribe to OIC. And you have given the example like YouTube channel subscription and Times of India, like you said. Can you put that into a business application, business in sense from ERP perspective?
You can, yes.
Like I was mentioned.
I will take an example in the later sessions wherein I will show you one of the real-time example of publish to OIC and subscribe to OIC, and then you will understand better.
Okay, fine.
And Ankur, I have one question. Like there is one integration style that is file transfer, and we have one separate module that is file server. So from using this file transfer, we can transfer the file, and from file server also we can achieve the same functionality. So what is the difference between these two?
The file transfer is a integration pattern where you are defining your integration. You are developing your integration to transfer data from from one application to another. The file server is not an integration. It is like a FTP, which you can leverage in the file transfer pattern via the FTP adapter.
So file transfer is just name for the name is its file, but actually we are transferring the data. It's not a file.
Yes, correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I hope it's clear to everyone. Fine. Now you tell me, I want to create a REST API. So which pattern I should use?
App
App
driven.
driven.
Correct. So
Publish.
choose the app driven and then select. When you create an integration, you have to select the pattern and then you have to define the integration name here and then few other information. Let's say greeting API. Similar to the connections, you have to give the integration name and then based on the name, your identifier will be picked up. You can update it if you want. The version of the integration, it is in the format of xx dot yy dot zz. I will explain this versioning thing later, but yes, when you create a new integration, the version will be in this format. Documentation URL, you can put any internet URL here, keyword, anything, and then package. The package is nothing. It is like you want to put that integration in the package. You can select the existing package from this list, or you can create a new package. Let's say form.rest. So what will happen? The new package will be created and this integration will be the part of this package. You cannot create the package from this package section. The package creation will be created from this dialog box only. The description and then click on a create button. Now here, when you create an integration, you will be landed onto the integration designer, wherein you will see the pattern which you have selected. Okay. And when you choose the app driven orchestration pattern, you will see the trigger point. Here you have to define your trigger point. On this designer, you will see the different actions. Okay. One is the select. It was just to select the component, any component which you want to select. You can view this designer into two different mode. One is the pseudo mode and the second is the canvas mode. We will use the canvas. Repositioning. Repositioning will allow you to reposition one component to another place, but you don't have option to copy and paste. Let's suppose you have defined two adapter here, one here, and you want to move from one place to another. You can do that too, but you cannot reposition all types of components. I will explain it later. What all components can be repositioned and what not. Vertical, you can view the designer into two modes, one horizontal and then vertical. Right? You can reset it to the default one. You can maximize, minimize. Click here. Is that go to trigger? Okay. Fine. You can expand it. And here you have one action menu, tracking, export, regenerate endpoint, summary of the integration. Okay. And also you can see the primary info from here, like the name, identifier. You can change the integration name, but you cannot change the identifier. You cannot update the version. If you have not created the package of this integration, you can update it later also. You can define the documentation URL, keyword, and then description later too. You can delete that integration from here. You can save, you can close. Here you see three things. One is the triggers point. When you create the app driven orchestration and you don't define the trigger, then you will see the triggers here only, and all the adapters which are based on the role trigger will be visible here. Let's suppose you have another connection which are based on the invoke, which that will not be visible here till the time you configure the trigger point. You will see the errors in the integration. We have one error integration. I will explain this later. You can create the global variables using this. We will explain this later also. Now what we want? Now I want to create a REST API. So in order to create a REST API, I will drop the REST adapter here, which I have created. You can either click inline plus and choose your adapter, or you can simply expand it and then drag and drop. Whatever option you switch, whatever option you want to choose, you can choose it. Whenever you drop the adapter, whether it's on the trigger, whether it is on the invoke point, one wizard will be opened, wherein you need to define the information. What the first information, what do you want to call your endpoint? It can be anything. You can say greeting API. You can define the meaningful name here to identify your resources. What does this endpoint do? You can define the description optionally of this endpoint. Select to configure multiple resources or verbs. I will show this option later. It is to create the multiple resources via the single endpoint. I will show you this later. Click on a next button. The operation name will be default if you don't select it. If you select it, then you will be allowed to provide the operation name. But if it is unchecked, then the operation name will be default and you don't have option to update it. You can describe the operation, what operation is going to perform. This is important. What is the endpoint's relative resource URI? For example, you have to give /order ID/items, something like this. It can be anything and it will a resource. Let's say greeting. The greeting will become a resource. And make sure whenever you are creating a REST endpoint, whenever you are creating the REST, you will start with /. And after / you can give anything. Right? And here you see what action do you want to perform. You can choose any verb: get, put, post, delete, patch. I have described the meaning when you want to use get, when you want to use the put. I will use the get because I want to fetch the data here. Here we have different options, and based on your selections, you can add parameters or configure a request and or response for this endpoint. So the first option, so when you create the REST APIs, you may need to send some input parameter. Let's suppose you are creating a REST API wherein you need to pass the employee ID, and basis on that employee ID, you will get the information, means the response. So you have to create some placeholder wherein you will send the employee ID. Okay. So in order to create that placeholder, that is called request parameter. I am clicking this option checkbox. Add and review parameter for this endpoint. That is called request parameter. You have to define a key and you will use that key to send the value. And the further screens, right, depends on the selection, depending on the options you select here. Okay, the second options is not enabled because we have select the get operation. If you select post, then only this option will be visible, and it is used to send a request payload in the body. So let's use the get. This option is used to get the response from the REST endpoint. If you want the REST response, you can select the third one. Configure this endpoint to receive the response. Configure request header, configure response header. If you want to create some request header, standard or the custom, you can choose any one of the options. Similarly for the response header too. Then you will be allowed to create your response or the request headers. Configure course, it is basically if someone wants to consume your API, the server, let's suppose your API will be exposed on the OIC endpoint, this endpoint, okay? But this endpoint won't, if someone, let's suppose a host example.com want to consume your API, then you have to put into the course list. click on a next. Here you see request parameter
Can you come again about cross?
course. It is a course. It is called cross origin resource sharing. So what happens is in real time, so what happens is in real time, basically, let's suppose you have, sorry, let's suppose you have one host here and you have another host here, and this host is abc.com, okay, and another host is xyz.com, okay. So both hosts are different. If you want to communicate between those hosts, let's suppose you have one REST API on the abc.com, and this abc.com API needs to be called via xyz, okay. Then xyz.com cannot call this abc.com API until and unless you enable you whitelist this xyz.com on this abc.com server as a course. If you will call this abc in xyz, then you will see the course issue. So you have to have the course enabled here, course enabled, and you have to provide xyz.com here, so that xyz can consume the abc.com APIs. Understood? So this is,
Yes,
of course, is for the security purpose. Now here you see the third screen. Since we have selected this add and review parameter for this endpoint, so this screen will be visible request parameter. And now let's suppose you want to create a query parameter here. Click on this plus and you have to enter the name. So it can be anything, the meaningful name, and then data type, let's say string. Next, and here you see you are on the response, because on this resource configuration you have selected only the request and then response, so you are directly on the response. On the response screen you have a different options, like response is multi-part with payload. If you want to send the attachment in the response, then you can select this option. Plus you can select the XML payload, JSON payload as well along with the attachment. But if you want to send the attachment only, then you have to select both options. If you want to send only the XML payload or the JSON or the binary means again the octet stream, means the file attachment, you can select the binary. So XML schema is nothing, it is the when you want to send the data into the XML. So either you have to choose the XML schema or the XML sample, means you have to create a XML schema if you need the data in the XML. If you have a sample XML, you can upload the sample XML also. But if you need the data in the JSON, you can select the JSON. You can create .json file and then choose the file, or you can enter the JSON in line as well. JSON is nothing, it is very simple file which have the data in this particular format, key and value. Let's say greeting. You can say user greeting, okay. So that will be the key, and then you will pass the value dynamically and then okay.
Double quote is missing, Ankur, after user greeting.
Fine. And then next, and then finish. And here you can see the summary of your endpoint. Like we have given the greeting on this resource configuration. Method name is get. We have created one parameter and then JSON in the response, and then done. And here you see, click on a save button. Make sure you will keep saving your integration time to time. Okay. And here you see, you have the invokes now. All the adapters which are on the invoke will be visible here. As of now, I don't have any connection based on the invoke, so it's empty. But you can click on the plus, it will take you to the connections page directly to create a new connection. Here you see the action list. So there are different actions which you can use in the integration. And this action list is not available in your basic routing. This will be visible in your app-driven scheduled file transfer. This action is also not in the publish to OIC and subscribe to OIC pattern. So this is applicable in only the app-driven, scheduled, and then file transfer. We will use all one by one. Again, error, and then again, this is the global variable. And here, when you choose the adapter, you will see this is the mapper. A mapper is nothing. It is like a visual mapper, which will allow you to map the source and target fields. It will be created automatically as soon as you define the connection here. And you see, this is called return activity. And return activity you can see here. And this return activity will come automatically if you choose the response. If you choose the response here, if you don't choose the response, then stop activity will be there. Right now, let's open this mapper. In order to update this mapper, open this and click on an edit. Now, when you will open this mapper, you will see a different stuff here. The designer here, you will see all the fields at the source side, all the fields at the target. You see the source, you see the target here. The code means the XSLT code. So this mapper is nothing. It is the XSLT. The XSLT is one of the also language which allows you to map the data from source to target. Test will allow you to test the data. Let's suppose you are doing mapping from one field to another and you want to test this mapper. You can click on this test and then generate inputs. That input will be generated a sample and then execute, which will allow you to see the data, means mapping. You have the search option. If you want to specify, if you want to search any specific field, you can do that too. Similarly in the target. Now here you see greeting API request REST. So it will show you all the request field of your greeting API. Here you see we have the query parameter. So name is there. Greeting API response, it is the target. And here you will see the user greeting, which we have created in the response. Now, this is the request. This is the response. In the connectivity properties, we have another stuff like method, URI, relative URI, path. Similarly, in the response also. So when you want to send the response, you can send the status. It is like 200, 201. So this is the standard response statuses of the REST. And here you see the XSLT. Here you see basically toggle function. So in the mapper, you have a different set of functions which you can use to massage the data. Let's suppose in the user greeting key, I want to concat hi with this name. So here we have one string function. If you see the string, you can see the concat function. You can simply drag and drop here. When you drag and drop here, you will see this expression will be visible here. Okay. Now, if you want to hard code something in the concat function, do it in the single quote. Let's say hi, or let's say hello, space and then single quotes. After this comma, you can drag and drop name here. And then just simply save it. So you see, this has been mapped. Now you can close it. Now, if you want to delete this mapping, what you can do, you can right click here and then delete target node. Here you see this has been deleted. Mapping has been deleted. You can do this again. drag and drop. So concat function is just to concat two strings, okay, comma separated. You can concat multiple string. You have, let's suppose you want to concat one more, you can comma and then provide any other value here. Okay, then validate. So you have to validate this mapping after you have done this and then close it. Now you see the mapper color has been changed. Earlier it was the gray, now it is in the green, which means you have mapped it successfully. Now save. Now my one integration is completed, but you see the status. If you close this integration, you will see the status of the integration will be in the draft state. You see the status, the last column, and it is draft, which means your integration is not completed. So open this again and you see the error. And now one of the mandatory step in the integration to define the tracking. Tracking is one of the important thing. It is a business identifiers you can view here. You can business identifier enable runtime tracking on messages. Specify up to 3 tracking fields. A primary identifier is required. So let me just take an example here, the real-time example, how this business identifier or the tracking parameter will be useful. So let's suppose you have one integration REST API in which you passes the employee ID, and based on that employee ID, you send the response back. And this API is consumed in your application, wherein user login into the application, passes their user ID and then get the data. But for few users, let's suppose for me, for Nevix and other guys, the data could not be fetched. So what you will do, you will reach to the integration team wherein you will say, hey, I have called this API, but my data could not be fetched due to some issues. Can you check that? How you will do this? So you may needing, you will ask what's your employee ID, because employee ID is the primary for that employee. And then you will go to the monitoring dashboard, and if you have defined the employee ID as a tracking parameter, then you will be able to track that record basis on that employee ID. I will show you how. So these identifiers will help you to track your integration messages. One primary identifier is required, which will come from the sources. Source means the at the app driven level. So we have defined one trigger point REST API, wherein we have defined the name as a request parameter. That will be here. You can define it, and you can define 2 more, but at least one primary tracking parameter must be defined. Click on the save. So here you see the integration. Now the error is not there. You can simply go ahead, save it, and then close it. Now this time you see the status is configured. Now my integration is completed. Now I want to deploy this integration. How to deploy this integration? So deployment in OIC term, it is just like a activate and deactivate. Activate means you are deploying the integration. Deactivate means you are undeploying the integration. Now in order to deploy it, hover on this integration, click on this switch icon or the activate icon. If once you click on it, your integration will be deployed. But before deploying, you will see this dialog box here, wherein you see the enable tracing and then include payload. So basically, what is this? So here, this option will come for each and every integration. If go to settings and then tracing. If this option is on integration level, which means you can define tracing for each and every integration. If it is on, then that information will not, this checkbox will not be visible. If it is off, then also it will be off for each and every integration. So it is just like to enable the activity stream. Activity stream is nothing, whatever actions you have defined here, it will be tracked in your monitoring dashboard. So if you want, you can enable tracing. Include payload option is required if you want to view the data, what data has been sent to the OIC, what data you have sent to the target application, the complete payload. If you enable this option, then only the payload will be captured. Click on activate. Here you see confirmation integration greeting API has been submitted for activation. Click refresh to track progress. So this is just like a static. If you want to see the progress, click refresh. And here you see the activate. Means active, which means the integration is now your active and has been deployed. Okay. Now, if you want to disable the payload, you can do it directly from here. Click on this tracing and you can enable and then disable the tracing and then payload here. Okay. Now, how to test this API? There are two ways to test it. So OIC provides their testing tool. Okay. So before I test it, I will show you one thing. The endpoint of this API. So when you create a REST and integration, the REST endpoint will be generated automatically. So you can view it, click, hover on this row, click on this icon, and then here metadata. You can see the complete URL here. So this is the complete URL of your API. Here you can see, sorry. Here you can see this thing. So this is the host where your API is deployed and you can compare this thing. So this is your host, OIC host where your API has been deployed actually. This one. And then IC API integration will be added automatically. Then V1 flows and then REST. And here you see greeting API. This is the identifier of your integration. And then 1.0 is the version of your integration. This is 1.0. And then /greeting, which you have defined at the trigger point. I will show you. Here you define /greeting. So /greeting is your resource and then name. Name is the query parameter which you have defined. And then equals to, you need to pass the value. And you can see resource /greeting. The method is get, query parameter is name, response is the application JSON, and it will be in this particular format, this which you have defined. Now, how to test this API? In the OIC, you can directly test it. How? You hover on this, click on this, and then test. Once you click on a test, you will see one testing tool, greeting API, and wherein you can pass the URI parameter header if it is the body, the curl, and integration properties, if any. Let's suppose I want to test it. So enter anything in the name, let's say Ankur, and then test. Once you test it, our integration will be executed and it will show you the response. Here you see the user greeting and hello Ankur, and is the same format you can see here, user greeting, right? Similarly, you can say Deepak and then test. You can test one more time. So we have tested it 3 times. As soon as you will test, a instance will be created. It is just like a message, I can say, and one unique ID will be generated, that is called instance ID. And here you can refresh it and that is called your tracing. That is called your activity stream. If someone asks you, please go to your activity stream and track your activity, then you have to go to this activity stream. That will be visible in your monitoring dashboard too. And you can view that from here also when you test it. You can see all the activities tracked by date and time. And date and time is helpful when you want to see where the integration is taking time. You can see the integration request has received at this particular time. And then the next activity is executed at this particular time. The next activity, which is data mapping, is executed at this particular time. Then the greeting API response is executed at this particular time. Now message, you can click on this message and you can view the complete payload here, which you send to the API. You can see that you send the get method. This is the end point, right? The resource is greeting, that will be captured automatically actually. Okay. And then you can expand it. You can show the line number. You can copy to the clipboard whole payload. If you want to send to someone, you can download it. You can close it. Similarly, data mapping completed from message to message. You can see here. If you again, everything will be visible in the XML. Whatever, if you are sending even the JSON, it will be visible in the XML in the activity stream only. Okay. Here you see hello Ankur. And then also, okay, so you have to close the first one in order to view the second one. Okay. You see the execute response wherein you got the user greeting as a hello Ankur and you see the status 200. Okay. Fine. Now let's suppose you have closed it. Now how to now go to your monitoring dashboard, go to the integration and then dashboards. Now, how many times we executed it? We have executed 3 times. So it will show you 3 messages received and the success rate is 100%. No errors. Now go to the integration. You will see here, you can refresh it. 3 received, 3 processed. So this metric is for the, will show you of the within the what we say, if your instance has not purged, then only this metric is visible. Let's suppose the retention period, I mean. So this is as per the retention period. If your instance has been purged, it will not visible here. But this dashboard is global. It will show you the overall messages. Integrations. Now you see, you have received 3 messages on this integration, 3 processed, 3 succeeded, no error, no aborted. You can, so if you have another integration, you will see another line item here. If you have another, you will see another line item. So it's a grouping integration wise. So by default, it will show you the integration instances of the last 1 hour. If you want to view filter, you can filter it by last 1 day, but we don't have much, so it will be visible as is. You can search the integration by name. Now, if you want to track each and every message of this, you can go to the tracking or you can click here. Now you will be landed to the tracking page wherein you will see 3 messages here. So this is 1 message, this is 1 message, this is 1 message. And here you see the identifier. We passed Ankur 2 times, name Ankur. Okay. You see the instance ID. If sometimes you may need to track by instance ID, you can copy this instance ID here. Okay. All are unique actually. So if you copy it and paste it here, you will see this is 03. This is 02. And you can see copy. This is 01, which means all are different. Status, you see the duration, the last column. So you have three information: received, succeeded, duration. The duration tells you how much time it took to complete the whole integration. So sometimes someone can ask you how much time it is taking to complete it. So you can see the duration field. What time you have received the data? 5 minutes ago, succeeded 5 minutes ago. Now, if you click on this, or if you click here, view activity stream, it will show you the same thing, which we have seen. Now you can go to the monitoring dashboard and you can track each and everything. This is the instance ID. You can view the activities ascending and descending wise. You can download the logs, that will be a .json file. Okay, you can open it and view each and everything in that JSON file. You can download the CSV file as well as the JSON again. Similarly, for each and every message you can download. So the complete payload will be downloaded. Close it. Now, if you click on this identifier, you will be landed onto the designer. So this is different, wherein each and everything which has been executed successfully will be marked with green arrows. If something will be failed, it will be marked with red symbol. You can click here. Also, you can see the view activity stream from here too, the same thing. Close it. Now, if you want to track it, the primary identifier, let's suppose Deepak says my integration, I have not received the data. So you can go to this tracking page. You can search here. You can say Deepak. So this is case sensitive. You have to exact the same, provide the same. You see, this has been tracked. You can provide the primary identifier, the primary, secondary, or the third identifier, which will be tracked. If you have an additional identifier, that will be tracked here. So this is how you can track your instances based on the identifier. Now, if you want to hit that API via Postman, the different tools, so you can copy the same tool, same endpoint. Let me just open my Postman. Oh, sorry. Just allow me a minute, please. Okay. So here I will copy this endpoint here. Okay. The complete endpoint, and here I need to pass the data here. Anuj. Okay. And since this is the basic authentication enabled, so you have to enable the basic authentication. You have to pass the username and then password of the OIC user actually, and then send it. Then the data will be visible. So let me just hold down. Stop sharing. I will put the. Just hold on, please. Okay, so I have entered the username and then password. So here you see the basic authentication. Now click on a send, and here you see hello Anuj. Right, and see the authorization header has been added here automatically. It will be added once you add the basic authentication from here. This is how you can test it from the Postman.
Hello, Ankur. Am I audible?
Just allow me a minute, one more minute, please. Now here you see, this is here. So this is all about testing, creating an integration, testing it via the integrated testing tool. This is how you can track your integration instances end to end. You can ask your question, please.
Sorry, am I audible? Megamitra here.
Yeah, Mega, you are.
Okay. So, like Postman, we can test it to ARC also, correct? Advanced REST client for the JSON, for the REST API. Means we can test it through ARC also, advanced REST client.
I didn't get that. Can you repeat that?
I'm talking about advanced REST client, ARC.
Oh, I haven't heard that, but yes, if it is a REST client, you can do that too. Whatever REST client you want to use, you can use that to test the APIs.
Okay, and just another point, like you were showing the mapping. So
Yes.
through this mapping, can we create the mapping with database columns also? Means can we do the mapping with database columns also?
Yeah, I will show you that one. Yes, we can absolutely till the time you will define the source and target mapping, you cannot transfer the data. So whatever mapping you want to define, you have to use the mapper only. I will show you that one also.
Okay, so through the XSD file, correct? You were saying about that.
Yes. No, not XSD. I will show you that one. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Ankur, Tejeshwar here. I have one question. As you showed two different ways to test the integration, request and response. Now, if I want to say HTTPS certificate is visible in Postman also, like in the, as you were explaining, right? And in the OIC cloud test dashboard, when you were testing, the green symbol which was appearing on the right hand side.
Let me see which one you are talking about. While doing the testing from here?
Yes. All the green messages appeared and the instance ID was there.
No.
Instance ID.
No. It will not be visible in the Postman. This is the feature of the tool itself. So if you want to monitor it, you have to go to this monitoring here and then track. So here you see now we have the 4 messages now.
Correct. Initially it was 3. Now after testing from the Postman, it came 4. Now where we can see the HTTPS certificate basically.
HTTPS certificate test? I didn't get that.
Should I?
Which certificate you are
exactly
talking about? Hello? Hello?
Yeah. Request and response. It is now a simple one. Just the greeting what we have sent with the value. If really in real time we are passing a data and then say some.
I will show you. I will
5 to 6.
That I will show
you. Okay.
Any other question, anyone?
Yeah, I have another question, Anku. So you have told us when the response will succeed, correct? So can you just tell me in which case the response might be in failure status?
That I will also show you later.
Okay.
But yes, if it is in the error, the status will be error, and the errors instance you can track from here only in the errors screen. I will show you that one.
Okay, thank you.
Hello?
Ankur, one question. If this is inbound data, and I say we have received the XML payload into the system, how can I process this? Say I have an Oracle application, so I want to process the data and store in some table or something like that, take further actions. How am I going to consume this data? Like how I know where is this data is there sitting in the system?
So this API you have to consume from somewhere. So you have to give this URL to someone to consume it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you want to save that data, let's suppose whosoever is sending the name, you want to save that data, you have to use another adapter to save it. But here I am just doing like hello name and sending as a response only. But I will show you also if you want to save that data into a database, how to do this.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's the main thing.
And Ankur, here that WSDL or WADL is not required. WSDL or WADL are not required.
No.
Ankur, like one question here, like each transaction we can consider as like in our testing phase, right? One message pack right here. Is that correct?
Can you repeat?
Yep. In our testing, right? Suppose like initially we are passing like Ankur is, that is like one transaction.
Correct.
That we can consider as a one message pack, right?
Yes. One message, only one message, not one message pack. One message pack means 5,000 messages in a single single hour, which means in a single hour you have consumed 4 messages.
Okay. Yeah, only 4 messages.
Still you have 4996 messages to consume in an hour.
Okay, got it. Yep.
And here you can go to this usage matrix and you can view here too as well. You can download the complete matrix, there it will be visible.
Okay, yep, got it.
Any other question or should I move forward, guys?
To extend of that question, like Ankur, like maybe if it is like more than 5,000, it means like other transactions couldn't be dropped or?
No, it will not be dropped. So the Oracle is going to charge whatever pack you have. Let's suppose it is just like a flexi, right? When you approach Oracle, they will say you just recharge your account with 10,000 rupees. And let's suppose one message pack is having only 5,000 in a monthly. Okay, then if you have consumed 5,000 messages, you still have 5,000 rupees. Then if you are going over, then the money will be deducted from your 5,000 rupees, remaining 5,000.
Yep, got it. Yep, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Now let me just explain another scenario. Now this is the first scenario which I have showcased. Let's how to create your REST API. Now what if you want to consume your REST APIs? So let's suppose I have this API available over the internet. Any API, okay? So whatever API, so let's suppose this is your external API which you want to consume in your Oracle integration. So how to consume it? So every REST API is having the host name, the base URL. So that is called your base URL. So that will remain same from this host. You can call any other API of the same host. We have another API called post, but this thing will remain the same. Similarly, you can pass one more. This is another API. Okay, you have another API also to do so. To do's. Okay. In each and every case, so I have executed 4 APIs. For 4 APIs, the base URL is same, and then this is changing to do's, which means that is called relative URI. Now, if you want to consume the API, you should know the endpoint of it, the request and then response, and what is the security mechanism, and if this API is reachable over the internet or not. So you should know the endpoint. So this is the endpoint to call your API. Now I want to consume that API. So in order to consume that API, you have to create a REST connection with this API. So for this, again, I am going to use the REST adapter. Select REST. I am saying consume JSON API. Now tell me the role which I should select here. What is the role should I select here?
Invoke.
Invoke,
right?
That's correct. Fine. Click invoke and then. Now when you create the REST with invoke, you will see another different properties which you need to set here. Okay. You have different section. One is the connection properties, one is the security, and the third is agent group. Let me just describe one by one. Connection type. So when you create the REST API, REST API can be on different mechanisms. It can be a REST API, metadata, Swagger, RAML, and then Open API. So these are the REST APIs type, you can say. So here you see, if I duplicate this, here you see this endpoint. Okay. So when you create the REST API in OIC, you see the basic, the REST endpoint, the Swagger, and then Open API. And if you click here, that will show you the definition of your REST API, and that is called Swagger. So Swagger is nothing. It is the description of your API that tells you the complete structure of your API. Similarly, the Open API also. So someone can give you the Open API URL or the Swagger. Someone can give you the REST API based URL. In 98% cases, we are using the REST API based URL only, which is this one. So select this REST API. TLS version, it may be 1.1, 1.2. If you don't select it, it's optional. But for the InfoSec standpoint of view, use 1.2. But depends on the API. If this API supports 1.2, you can select 1.2. Otherwise, you can leave as it is. Connection URL, this is important thing. When you create the REST connection, make sure you will provide the basic URL of that endpoint. And what is the basic URL of this endpoint is till.com, means the server URL. Copy this and then paste it here, and make sure you don't select the last slash. So this is the server URL of your REST API. So every time you create the REST connection from a third-party application, make sure you will only provide the base URL. The two-way SSL, if it is requires certificate or a two-way SSL, you can select no, otherwise leave it. You can provide the key store LIS, which will be given by the third-party user, third-party vendor. This is important. Security. Here you will see the different options here altogether. Basic authentication, you have a different OAuth, the API key, OAuth 10, AWS, OCI signature, and no security policy. By default, basic, wherein you need to pass username, password. You have OAuth. If you select it, you will see different options altogether. If you see this one, you will see different options altogether. For API, you will see different options. So this option depends on the external API which you are consuming. So let's suppose in order to consume this API, you simply need to use basic username password, as we have done in our Postman, wherein we have passed the basic username password. Similarly, you have to basic authentication and you need to provide the username and then password that will be provided by the third party. If this API is OAuth secured, then accordingly you have to choose the OAuth, and then this policy will be told by the third party, and accordingly you can choose one. In most of the cases we use the two lagged, wherein we have to provide the access token request URL, refresh token, and other stuff. Or you can use this resource owner, the access token URL, the client ID, the client secret, the scope, and then username and then password. And if your API is not secured, you can simply use the no security policy. If this API is not secured, so I will use the no security policy. This agent group is required if and only if your API you are trying to consume is accessible behind the firewall, means the private API. So for this, you have to create a connectivity agent, and then you have to select the agent group. I will show you this later. Since my API is public, then I can simply ignore this option. Now, here you see save this 85%. Now test it. If everything is okay, then the connection will be tested. Now you can simply save it again. And now here you see the configured, and then now you see this create REST API is used within two integrations. Okay, why two? Read API, or someone is trying to create it. Okay. So here you see, now we have this consume JSON API. Now, what I want to create my own REST API. And from my REST API, I will call this API. So let's create another integration and create an app driven and then select. So which means I am wrapping up this API, which means this API. I will wrap, okay, let's say post one only, right? I will wrap this API or users. I will wrap up this API in my custom API. Let's say consume external API. Okay, and then click on the create button. Save. Now what I want to call this create REST API adapter and then drop it here because I want to expose my custom API. So I will quickly say call external, you can say user API, then next. Here you can provide anything, let's say /users or let's say EMP. Anything, it will be a get, and here I want to configure the response also. I don't want to send any request because I'm not getting the data user specific. So I want to get all the data. Next, I need the data in the JSON, select JSON and then line. So here in this, I am saying I only want to get few data. Let's say username, you can say name and then email. User, you can say first name, let's say email. So these are my custom field, and now I need the data in the array, so I will create this as an array. And then okay, next, and then finish. Now here, what I want to call this API. Now tell me, what should I do? I need to call the connection which I have created using this URL. So here, if you go here, you can see REST, and this is the consume JSON API. I will drag and drop here. Now again, I need to configure that. I can give any name, call external API. Now you tell me what relative resource URI I should put it here.
Response of post.
The path
The users
of
path.
the users.
Correct. So
Users.
it will be the exact same. And make sure you will have the slash also in starting. So this should be the exact same. And here I don't need to pass anything. So I am not creating any parameter, but yes, I will get the response. So I will configure this endpoint to receive the response, and then next. And here, if this API is sending the data in the JSON, so make sure you will select the JSON only. And in line, you have to provide the structure in the same format. So I will copy this and then paste it here. What I can do, I can limit that. I can take only few records, but make sure it will be in the same structure. You can remove this data also. You don't require data. And then okay. For now.
write braces.
Fine. Next. Okay. Now I don't need to use this mapper. So here you can see which mapper is related to which one. So user API, user API. So this mapper is the response mapper of this. And this one, which is at the left hand side of this, is called your request mapper. And this is your response mapper, the right hand side. So I don't need to configure anything in the request in this adapter. So I am neglecting this and I need to map it. So edit this. And here you see call external API response, the second one. And this bracket information shows the type of adapter, the rest. So I need to expand this. You can see the exact structure here, which you have defined from this one. You can say ID, name, username, email, then you have the address also. Under address, you will have the geo. And this user API response is your custom defined. You can see top level array means this is the array type, username, first name, email address. Now here you see this is the repeated element. You see the difference between this icon and this icon. So you see the multiple. This indicates this is the array type. And you don't have the multiple, which means this is the single element. You can view the information, node info, repeated, true. Similarly here, you see the node info, repeating, true. Now, if you want to, here you see it is saying it is sending the multiple records of a user. 1 record, 2 record, 3 record, 4 records. Similarly, we have the 10 records. Now you need all the 10 records. So what you can do the for each here. Right? It will do the for looping automatically. And now I want name in the first name. I want username in the username, and then email to email address. You can see the code generated behind this. For each, the username has been mapped to the username. The name has been mapped to the first name, and then email has been mapped to the email address. Right? Now, if you want to modify something directly, you can modify here also. This is the feature, this editing feature is available in this version only. In this version. In the previous version, it is not available. If you go to designer, you can see the mapping has been changed. Now the email mapping has been removed. Validate. So you can have single source mapped with multiple targets. You can do that too. If you want to change it again, you can change it from here. Here you see. Validate. Now if you want to test it, your mapper, you can click on this test, generate inputs. You can see the call external API response. You can see the sample input has been generated, executed. You can see the data here. Validate and then close it. Now my integration is done. Now what is the thing which I need to do to remove this error?
Tracing.
Tracing, correct. Enable tracking, and then here you see I have not defined any request here. Okay, so nothing is visible. Only thing is you see the these options. You can give anything, let's say the relative. If you save it, you will not be able to save it because it does not accept dot. You can remove the dot or you can say anything here, URI. Save it and then close it. Now your integration is completed. So what you need to do? Activate and then activate. So by default, enable tracing, include payload is there. Let me just disable this and I will show you activity stream will not be visible. You can click here also to take the endpoint of this EMP, right? Now test. Right? You cannot give anything here, simply test. Here you see. You can refresh it. Here you see, you don't see any data. Maybe this activity stream will not be visible here. It's there. Okay, but here you see, you will not be able to see the payload because we have not enabled the payload option. If you want to enable the payload option, let me just tracing, enable tracing. Now again you can test it. You can see now message is there. You can see this is the data which you have received from your. Okay, this is the data which is there. And now if you want to see which data you have received from the third API, from the third party REST API, you can see here message sent to call external and message received from call external API. Click here, you see. But you have only sent this data. So here what we have done, we have wrapped up this API and then only we have sent these three fields in the response. So this is how you can call the REST APIs of any third party in the integration cloud via the REST adapter. Any question, anyone, please? Hope it is clear.
Ankur, one question here, like with one trigger connection, we can consume n number of external REST APIs.
No. So once your connection is created, okay, you can consume it in n number of integration. It does not matter. You can call it from only the REST, from the trigger one. You can call this in the schedule integration too.
Okay.
Actually, Ankur, for one day it's too much. Means.
Yeah, I'm not moving forward. I will wrap the session for the day.
Tejashwar, here you were mentioning about TSL some version, right? Somewhere initially, not before the demo, that someone will say we don't accept.
Huh?
In the configuration, you shared something TSL.
TSL. Okay, TLS.
Yeah, sorry, TLS. So you were saying by default, yeah, exactly. Version 1.2 and 1.1. So can you please elaborate once again?
So TLS is the security mechanism of your REST APIs or the SOAP API TLS version. So it is related to security, transport layer security.
Yes. Transport layer security. Okay.
And now the updated version is the 1.2, means the recent version. And InfoSec or the security team says that you should use the 1.2. Maybe it is the improved version of the 1.1.
Okay.
Any question, anyone? I hope it's clear to everyone. Okay, guys, if no question, then I will wrap up the session and we will meet tomorrow same time. And I will
tomorrow, one day it will be a big problem to grasp each and everything, Ankur.
Can you repeat that?
Means I'm saying within a day, okay, it will be a bit problem to grasp each and everything what you explained today.
So you have the whole week, right, to grasp each and everything. And from 24th only, I will have the session on Saturday itself.
So tomorrow you will start something else topic means.
Absolutely, yes. Okay. Fine. Then I will drop the session for the day. We will meet tomorrow, same time.